13 days of relentless bombing. His father killed. His mother killed. His wife killed. His daughter killed. His own body wounded in the same strike that wiped out his entire family in a single night. And today, the man America thought it could break before he even began, the new Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, finally spoke. Not on video. Not in an audio recording. A written statement, read by a state television anchor, with nothing but a photograph on the screen. And every single word he said was a declaration that this war is not ending. Not soon. Not on America's terms. Not ever. Donald Trump woke up this morning and read those words. And sources say he expressed disappointment. That might be the understatement of the entire war. Welcome.
Subscribe right now.
Because what happened today in Tehran is the single most important development since the first bomb fell on February 28th. This is the moment that changes the trajectory of everything. Let's go. Here is what you need to understand first. The fact that Mojtaba Khamenei issued a written statement at all, read by someone else, with only a photograph, no video, no audio, tells you something critical before you even read a single word of it. The health and current whereabouts of the new leader are still unclear. Israeli officials had previously indicated they would target anyone appointed to succeed the slain elder Khamenei. Experts suggest the written statement poses less security risk than a public appearance or a video message from a potentially identifiable location. As one analyst put it directly, he is being hunted down, essentially. Foxed, https://kfoxtv.com/news/local/l-passo-primary-2026-election-results. The Supreme Leader of Iran is in hiding, wounded, hunted. His entire immediate family killed in a single American airstrike on the very first night of this war. And from wherever he is concealed right now, underground, in a hardened bunker, in an undisclosed location somewhere in Iran, he chose his first words to the world with absolute deliberate precision. He said he learned of his own appointment as Supreme Leader from state television, along with everyone else in Iran. KSAT, https://www.ksat.com/news/politics/2026-03/0-4/how-texas-voted-in-the-primary-election. Think about the weight of that sentence. The most powerful man in a nation of 90 million people found out he was the most powerful man in that nation by watching the news. His father was killed. His family was wiped out. And within days, clerics appointed him to lead a country at war, while he was still wounded, while the bombs were still falling, before he had even processed the loss of everyone he loved. Like this video right now. Because what came next in that statement is what every diplomat, every oil trader, every military planner, and every government on earth needed to hear, and none of them wanted to. Mojtaba Khamenei declared that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz must continue as a tool to pressure the enemy. He said all U.S. military bases in the Middle East should close immediately and that those bases will be attacked. Oil prices extended their gains the moment those words hit the wire. KSAT, https://www.ksat.com/news/politics/2026-0-3/0-3/election-results-key-races-to-watch-and-march-2026-primary. The Strait stays closed. Every American base in the Middle East is a target. That is not a negotiating position. That is not an opening bid in a diplomatic backchannel. That is the Supreme Leader of Iran telling the world, in his very first public act, that 20% of the world's oil supply will remain strangled for as long as this war continues. And then he went further, much further. Khamenei declared that Iran is looking at opening new fronts in the war, in places where the enemy has little experience and is highly vulnerable. He thanked Iran's regional proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the pro-Iranian militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen, and said that cooperation across the axis of resistance will undermine the U.S. and Israeli war effort. His comments directly foreshadowed the possibility that the Houthis could soon formally join the war. Wadaga Democrat, https://www.http://article_1B2F028A-8A2E-408A04050 HTML. New fronts, where the enemy has little experience and is highly vulnerable. The Houthis entering the war. Read those words and ask yourself, where exactly does Iran believe America is vulnerable and inexperienced? In cyberspace? In underwater infrastructure? The subsea cables and pipelines that carry global internet traffic and energy across the ocean floor? In financial markets, where a coordinated attack on oil derivatives could cause cascading damage far beyond anything a missile can achieve. Iran has been studying that question for years. And its new supreme leader just announced publicly that the answer is ready and the activation switch is on the table. Share this video, because this statement just rewrote the strategic map of this war. Let's go deeper. Rather than what the Trump administration might have been hoping for, some change in rhetoric, some opening toward negotiation, what the world got was a doubling down on every established Iranian position. The message offered no off-ramp for an immediate cessation of violence and no elaboration on what an acceptable outcome for Tehran would look like. Instead, it promised that revenge for those killed is a file that will remain open. Al Jazeera, https://www.aljazeera.com/video/the-listening-posts/2026/3/7/Trump-net-Netanyahu's-war-and-search-of a file that will remain open. Not today. Not next month. Not after a ceasefire. A file that will remain open for as long as Iran exists as a state. That is a generational declaration of vendetta against the United States and Israel, written into the founding doctrine of the new Supreme Leader's rule on the very first day he addressed his nation. He vowed that Iran will not refrain from avenging the blood of its martyrs. Every citizen killed by the enemy is a case for vengeance in itself. And on the subject of compensation, we will receive compensation from the enemy, and if he refuses, we will take as much of his property as we determine, and if that is not possible, we will destroy the same amount of his property. KSAT, https://www.ksat.com/news/politics/2026/03/0for/how-texas-voted-and-the-primary-election. Destroy the same amount of his property. From a man whose father was killed, whose mother was killed, whose wife was killed, whose daughter was killed, in a single American airstrike 13 days ago. That is not rhetoric. That is a personal oath wrapped inside a state declaration. Now here is the detail that should concern Washington most. The detail buried beneath the defiance and the vows of vengeance. The crack inside the Iranian government that this statement just made impossible to ignore. Khamenei's statement directly contradicted that of Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, who the day before had suggested Iran would consider ending the war if certain conditions were met, the first diplomatic signal from Tehran since the conflict began. The president of Iran opened a door, and within 24 hours, the supreme leader slammed it shut. Publicly, emphatically, in writing, broadcast to the entire world. The civilian government and the supreme religious and military authority of Iran are not speaking with one voice. And in the Iranian system of government, when those two voices conflict, there is no ambiguity about who wins. The supreme leader wins. Always. Every time. The IEA and major consuming nations took the extraordinary step of releasing 400 million barrels from strategic reserves, the largest such intervention in the agency's history. The IEA estimated global supply could fall by 8 million barrels per day in March as production across the Middle East is curtailed and shipping through Hormuz slows to a fraction of normal levels. PBS, https://www pbs.org/news/march-9-2026-pbs-news-hour-full-episode. 400 million barrels released from strategic reserves. The largest emergency oil release in the history of the International Energy Agency. And oil prices still rose after Khamenei's statement hit the wires. Because the market understands something that press conference optimism cannot paper over. The man who controls the Strait of Hormuz just told the world he is not opening it. Not for diplomacy. Not for economic pressure. Not for Trump's deadline. Not for anyone. Suzanne Maloney, director of the Foreign Policy Program at Brookings, said the Iranian regime was feeling pressure to reassure the nation. But she added, a written statement read by others does not quell concerns or speculation about the stability of this new leadership and the regime as a whole. Foxed, https://kfoxtv.com/news/local/l-paso-primary-2026-election-results. That instability is a double-edged sword. A wounded, hidden supreme leader who cannot appear on camera projects weakness to the Iranian people. But a wounded, hidden supreme leader who has nothing left to lose, who watched his entire family die in a single American strike, who is being hunted, who just told the world that revenge is a file that will never close. That man is also the most dangerous kind of adversary. Unpredictable, personal, unbound by the diplomatic calculations of a leader with a political future to protect. Iran analyst Arash Azizi told CNN that the statement gives very little hope to Iranians for a better future. It contains no promise of reform and no indication that the new supreme leader intends to abandon any of his father's core policies. It is instead full of threats, including the threat of destroying Israel and forcing U.S. bases out of the region. Al Jazeera. 13 days in. The new supreme leader has spoken. The strait stays closed. Every American base is a target. New fronts are being studied. The Houthis are being activated. Revenge is a permanent file. And the door that Iran's president quietly opened yesterday was slammed shut by the supreme authority of the Iranian state before the ink was dry. Trump wanted regime change. He got a regime. Wounded, hunted, hidden but standing. And speaking. And promising, in the first words of its new era, that it intends to make America pay for every single thing it has done. That is where this war is on day 13. And the most important question in geopolitics right now is not whether Iran's military can survive the bombing. We know it can for now. The question is whether the political will in Washington can outlast the vow of a man with nothing left to lose, speaking from a bunker somewhere in Iran, with his family's blood on American hands and a closed strait beneath his feet. Drop your answer in the comments. Do you think there is still a diplomatic exit from this war after today's statement? Subscribe right now for every major update as this story develops by the hour. Share this video, and we will see you in the next one.